Hello, everybody. Welcome to the June 2026 Feeling of Computing virtual meetup. Three demos today, as usual. Shawn, myself, and NoxNode. Yeah, you all know the format. You all know the deal. Shawn, whenever you're ready, take it away.
All right, thank you, Abby. Let me share my screen here. All right, can you all see that? And it's
Yeah,
zoomed appropriately. So this is a
great.
tool that I've been building,
Might be a
started off building
tiny
for
bit
myself.
small. You might want to zoom
Okay,
in ever so slightly if you can.
so
If
well,
we need
actually,
to read
this
the code.
yeah, this is a little confusing because it's a screenshot of an IDE inside of an IDE, so
Uh,
it'll get a little bit bigger.
okay,
But
cool.
yeah, I just wanted to take advantage of the web browser that's in the IDE. But yeah, it's a tool that I built for myself. I've been using a lot of AI to write code, and over time, I've found things that weren't covered by existing tools, and also things that I wanted to kind of rethink about my own workflow so that I could, stay in control of what I was doing and infuse my own creativity into what I'm building, and not just have the AI kind of taking over the creative part of what I do. I don't mind if it automates some of the boring parts. And so I built a number of custom skills for planning and that sort of thing. And then that turned into a custom Kanban board for organizing things. And then eventually a custom spec editor in Markdown for editing the specs. And then the most recent thing, which is what I'll be showing today, is what I'm calling code walkthroughs. And so the idea is that I've got a lot of agents running in parallel, generating code for me based on the specs that I've developed. And when they finish, I want to know, did they do what they said they would do? Did they do what I asked them to do? What decisions did they kind of take upon themselves and go around the spec, that sort of thing. And if I have to just review every single line of code that they wrote, then it ends up being, possibly more time than me just writing the code myself. And so I've been trying to think about how I can review things at a higher level instead of just reviewing, diffs after diffs after diffs. So yeah, this is a free VS Code extension. I'll be showing it in Cursor, but it works in any VS Code fork. So you can download it from atelier.dev. And there's no charge or anything. It's just a free tool that I'm developing. Um, all right, so let me start off by showing you uh, tiny vibe coded app that I built just for the purpose of this demonstration. So this is not Atelier. This is just something that I built in 5 minutes. But you can imagine, AI is really good at helping you come up with new ideas or prototype new ideas, explore new ideas quickly, test them out. You don't necessarily know all the details of the code, but it's a good way of testing something quickly. So here I have something where it's a Kanban board, but you can, drag stuff over, and then it's kind of simulating like an agent working on it and then moving it to the next column of the Kanban board. So great, it kind of works. It seems like it proved my idea. And then I start, trying to run multiple agents in parallel. And I get this weird state bug where it kind of jumps back into to do and then jumps back forward. And it's like, well, what do I do now? Because I didn't write this code. Don't understand how the code worked. Um, it's a pretty simple app. So actually you can do the vibe coding approach and just explain to the agent like, hey, this is wrong, fix it. But I think that doesn't really scale well as we're trying to the whole purpose of this is that I'm trying to prototype new ideas so that I learn something about what's possible and then can integrate that into more and more complex ideas. And so if I start from a basis of not understanding how these simple things work, it's only going to get worse as I get into more complex stuff. So instead, what I've built is this custom Atelier skill. So it's a slash command. You just write it. Atelier explore. Why do some of the progress cards move back to the column when the task is completed? Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I can just kick this off. And if you used any of these tools before, you know that often they'll do some sort of exploration at the beginning, right? They'll start grepping through your files and exploring things and kind of building their own mental model. But then that mental model is never really communicated to the user, right? Once they've found what they need to find, they just sort of throw that data away. And so the Atelier Explorer skill is about taking that exploration process and turning it into something that can actually be like a transferable mental model that the user can build upon, so that I'm not just vibe coding this and telling it that's overloaded. So you can see it actually worked here. I've got a couple options. This is just something that I added into the skill. So it's not just one type of walkthrough, right? There's any number of different things that you could want to explore about the code base at different zoom levels. And so I try to guide the user through, deciding on what type of walkthrough they want, and then we generate. And unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time to run through this. So while that's running, I am just going to do the whole cooking show thing and copy over an already baked walkthrough. So you can see this is just a markdown file that the agent wrote before this presentation, but it will write the same thing soon. And if I switch this into, instead of the regular markdown editor, the Atelier markdown editor, then you can see how I've rendered this. So each step is kind of like a H2 heading. And then I have this little presentation button at the bottom. And when I click on that, it kind of goes into walkthrough mode. So now instead of having the whole markdown document, I'm just seeing one H2 heading at a time. You can see the table of contents here. There's all of them. And then I can just sort of step through this like a PowerPoint presentation or something. And it's walking me through the markdown file, but also with these deep links into the code. So that's what the agent was doing when it was exploring the code base and kind of finding all these fragments of code that it thought was relevant to the problem that I was solving. It's also got, mermaid diagrams in here. So I can zoom in and see, a little sequence diagram. And again, the sequence diagram can also have its own deep links into the code. And so this is a way that I can understand how that bug actually appears in the code. But what I've been interested in recently,
cool.
Thank you.
Just interrupting to say, that's really cool. You're not seeing other people's faces. Nobody's unmuting. I'll do it. That's neat.
Yeah, is each one of those like 1 through 4 like tabs or screens of cards? Is that literally just the sections from the markdown file?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So
it's really wild what eliminating the rest of the document does, like, and from a UX, like it's cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty easy right now with any agent to just say, hey, explain how this code works to me, and it will dump a big markdown document back at you. But I found, like, through my own experience as a software engineer, I tend to build up understanding of code bases and layers, right? So you start with some sort of slice and you figure out, okay, I understand when the user clicks on this, it runs that, but where does that come from? And you kind of build up your understanding like layer by layer that way. And there's not really anything that I've seen for agents that help users build up that layer by layer understanding of the code base. It's either just read all the code or get a big markdown document and try to figure it out yourself. But yeah,
Katherine,
if I go back in,
before you go back, Katherine in the chat asked, how do you deep link to certain parts of the code? I was also wondering about that. So
absolutely.
Yeah, how does that work?
So this is the markdown file. So you can see I have some custom front matter here that tells me, like, hey, you can view this as a markdown or as a walkthrough. So that differentiates it from other markdown files in my workspace. You can see every H2 heading, those are the steps. I've linked the title, and that's my kind of little mini convention for saying, like, here's the thing that you should jump to when you go to that step. And these are a little bit hard to read, but it's basically this text fragment notation. So if I, what's that? I don't know. Is anyone here familiar with text fragments? There's a W3C spec for that.
For those who aren't familiar, it's a way of adding a little, some specially syntaxified text to like a URL fragment. Yeah, there's the syntax that lets you
Yeah.
highlight or focus on a specific span of text by including the text that you want it to focus on just in the fragment. So it like drives you right to that spot.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's pretty cool. Like it works across web pages or markdown files. You just have to implement that spec.
I'm quite interested in where the data from the sequence diagram comes from. Is that like a trace, or is it, you know, the logical steps in the program? Is it program state, or is it like runtime state?
Yeah, that's a good point, Tom. It is a sequence diagram coming from static analysis, which is a little bit strange because usually you would think it would come from dynamic analysis. So there are obviously pros and cons to that. The way that I think about that trade-off is that you can see here in the walkthrough, I have different zoom levels. So I start off with a very simple sequence diagram, and then as it goes along, I add more steps and eventually get to like a more complex, I mean, not that complex, but slightly more complex sequence diagram. But when you're doing things with LLMs in this kind of static analysis mode, you can kind of pick arbitrary zoom levels and kind of elide parts of it and say, oh, well, we don't care too much about the details of the back end. We're mostly focused on the front end. Whereas if you're going to do dynamic analysis, you would have to kind of run everything and have everything running, kind of be not forced, but it would be harder to do multiple zoom levels at the same time.
So what's the output? So is the output the markdown document, or is there like an intermediary, JSON or some other representation that you then render into markdown? Like, is this basically a tool that I can kind of use within another program, or is this kind of an entire engine in and of itself?
Yeah, so it's there's a lot of markdown. The agent writes the markdown, and there's also a custom skill. So when you saw me run, when you saw me run this Atelier Explore, that's the name of the skill. So there's it's a little bit hard for me to pull that up right now, but okay. But yeah, if you install Atelier, you can see that that's a markdown file, and it describes how to create walkthroughs. So it's pretty simple for the agent to kind of follow those instructions and create the markdown on its own. And then what I provided was this custom editor in VS Code, which can interpret deep links inside of UML diagrams or mermaid diagrams, which is not something that the VS Code supports by default. But I tried to do it in a way which is using open standards. It's just using Markdown and Mermaid and this text fragment syntax, which are all things that other people have implemented. There are sub-agents if you're aware of how like Claude and that sort of thing uses sub-agents. So let's see if I can zoom in on that. Okay, this is not. But anyways, the custom skill has some sub-agents where it will it'll go off and do what I call grounding. So if it's trying to pull in context from code, it'll do code grounding and find those little fragments of text. If it's referencing other markdown files, it'll do document grounding. And there's even a trajectory grounding. So it will look at its own agent trajectories and try and figure out like what its thought process was and how it got to that solution and ground it in that. So that's kind of the pre-processing step, I guess, if you think of it. But it is really just the markdown, the agent writing markdown.
So is there like a way that you'd think this could be embedded in another system, like say a web browser or some kind of binary? Or would you really need to shell out to like an agent like Claude or Codex or something to really get the full thing together?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been thinking of this almost like a read, execute, print loop with natural language capabilities, where oftentimes these walkthroughs are kind of like a intermediate artifact, right? Where I'm getting some understanding of the system, then I use that to do something else in the system, and then maybe they become out of date and I don't use them anymore. But there is a different flow where the walkthroughs become something that you maintain and you update. And as the system evolves, you keep on going back and asking the agent, hey, update those deep links that refers to the new code. And then that would be something that you could publish on a website, and it doesn't need to be connected to the agent. Again, it's just these markdown files being rendered, so they can be rendered in an ID, they can be rendered on a website. But yeah, it does kind of tie back into that like link staleness issue, right? It's like as the code moves forward, you do need to kind of bring this back into that loop with the agent to update the links and keep them fresh.
Okay, cool. Got it. Thank you.
Shawn, I sort of am very interested in the idea of like code walkthroughs as well. I have a plugin for Vim that kind of does something similar, but it's not in an agent context. My motivation is I have a bunch of at runtime I have a bunch of flags, and a bunch of different conditionals will trigger in the sequence of functions. And so it'll take a very different code path depending on if I have this setting toggled on or off, or that setting toggled on and off. So my debug cycle is always like, okay, I'll toggle this setting on, run through the debugger, and like trace the whole path that it takes. And then along the way, I'll select text and annotate it with like, because this happened, this is triggering, and this is doing this in this context. And so my intuition would be that if I wanted to automate that via agents, it'd be very difficult to do statically, because it's relying on, okay, in the UI, these 10 settings are this way, and therefore this very specific code path will be reached. And I just want to concentrate on that code path because I'm trying to debug this particular problem. How would you think about that in terms of like generating the markdown file, but in like the very specific circumstance of like this particular user story, like the user did X and therefore this code path triggered?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't have an example ready right now, but I haven't been experimenting with the Claude Code integration with Google Chrome MCP. And so you can basically describe in natural language a user scenario and then have Claude go and exercise that scenario in the web UI, clicking around, taking screenshots as it goes, and then adding those screenshots back into the walkthrough as inline images in the markdown file. And then your slideshow has images in it, right? And you can see basically your agent clicking through that user scenario and what that looked like. And so I think that's a really interesting thing, and kind of maybe in the future we'll even have videos where it's Claude is able to record videos of what it did. And so I think that's really interesting, as well as like at this point I'm showing very kind of low level function calls, sequence diagrams, but there's no reason it couldn't be much more high level user sequences of thinking in terms of the user experience and not so much just the code architecture.
Cool.
Awesome. Shawn, that brings us to the end of the time. Thank you so much for demoing. That was really cool.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I guess I'm up. I'm going to try and set a world record, or at least a PB, for shortest demo. I'm going to start the time, and I'm not going to give any context. I'm going to break my own rule. I'm going to say, you all can see this, right? This is showing up.
Yeah.
Why can't I see the chat either? How do I see? There we go. There's the chat. Great. That's not the demo. So it's a text editor, right? Does it have Kim vbinds? No, it does not have Kim vbinds. I'm gonna hit a keyboard shortcut, and down here, well, what's this? So this is a Final Cut Pro style magnetic timeline for reorganizing chunks of text in the text editor. Why? Well, let's keep going. we have this sort of like dark gray line here. That's the main timeline. I could also like, pull this clip over here, give it kind of its own space, and I can move it up and down. I'll pull this other clip over here and I'll put this one on top of that one and attach them. And so now if I move this one, that one moves with it. That's I don't know what that's going to be useful for. We'll have to see in a minute what that's useful for. What else could I do? I could take this one right here and I could like hide it underneath those ones. So now this sentence exists, I have it, but it's not being rendered anymore. It's just like stashed. So I could make like an alternate version of that sentence. What does it say? Love a text editor. I could say, cherish, GTRISH, text editor. So now I have like, oh, that's weird that it put that over there. This is so good. This is such a good bug to have hit in the middle of the demo. Awesome. Well, that's weird. I'm just gonna delete that clip and that clip. You could make alternate versions of sentences and stash them underneath the main timeline, and then at some point bring them back and be like, oh, I want that version of that sentence, or I want this other version of the sentence. So stashing is like one of the things I want to do with this. And that was actually the main feature that I had in mind when I made this, is like, I want to be able to have a text editor where I can be writing text and have alternate versions of sentences that I can swap in and out, or have other things that we might see in a second that you can swap in and out, where the actual text editor doesn't have a bunch of ugly UI stuff in it. Like it doesn't have a bunch of little, markers showing like, oh, there's a collapsed section here, or oh, there's a this thing. I want the text editor to be like, I want to like go like this, and it's IA writer, right? Like there's nothing here. It's just the text. And then every so often I can come down and use an alternative interface that projects back into the text editor and lets me, move back and forth between two modes of editing. So you can be like editing the text up here, and it's just like changing the clips down here, and then you come down here and you change the clips. So that's what I built and why I built it. What's the weird shit that happens as a result of having these two modalities interacting? Well, you can resize clips, right? You can resize clips and it like bumps them out. I should also say, this is extremely vibe coded. This is like the most vibe coded. Like I don't know all of the consequences of the code. And I don't care, because I just care about that idea of like, I want a text editor where I can swap stuff in and out. I don't care about like, oh, what happens if you put one clip over top of the other clip and now I have two copies of the sentence? Yeah, I can type lots of text. And if I edit one of them, it edits the other one because they're like multiply exposed is the thing Claude kept calling this. And it was like, oh no, there's going to be consequences of this on the model. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't matter. So there's like weird stuff like that. Or I could like put a period in the middle of that sentence and then it splits it into two clips and one of them is attached to the other one kind of on top. Well, that didn't work the way I thought it would work. That's weird. I'm going to have some words with Claude about that. I could say like, yeah, of text, and then it splits into more. So there's like consequences of this that I don't really know or care about, because the main thing that I want is I just want to be able to like type some text and then hide some of it and bring it back later. And I thought Final Cut Pro style magnetic timeline would let me do that. So that's my demo. That's it. That's the whole thing. So that was 4.5 minutes. Any questions, or should we move on to NoxNode?
A lot of questions.
Client side only, alternate streams, text with speaker notes. I mean, this is not going to work from for screen sharing reasons, but it is backed by AutoMerge, so I can have it open in 2 tabs and like change stuff in one, and then if I go back to the other one, well, it doesn't update until you reload, because Claude didn't think that real-time collaboration is real. So it's just time collaboration, so you have to reload. But yeah, so there's that.
Have you thought through like other tokenization schemes, not just periods and question marks and other punctuations, but like some sort of semantic tokenization?
No, maybe Claude thought through that. I sure didn't. I just said, make me a timeline and make it do this and that and the other thing.
I was just thinking.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, please finish your thought.
No, I'm not gonna. So
Oh, fine. I was going to say that that idea of semantic kind of brought that up. My partner is writing, getting back into it, and the idea that they could kind of put in whole sections of prose or content and then just move it around might be interesting because recently on Slack, someone I think was looking at creative writing, and so I was thinking, well, if they were writing a different paragraph, different pieces of story, they could just slide the entire paragraph around the entire section and see like, does that change the nature of the plot? This is really cool. I'm going to go show them.
yeah, that was actually what I was going to say when you very rudely cut me off, is that one of the things that I had to add was this, the way that it handles white space. Because if I have a sentence, like if I say like, you know, I am so bad at coming up with sentences on the fly. I should have practiced this. There we go. If I like start reorganizing these clips, like this last, I'll call them clips and sentences interchangeably. This last one does not have a trailing white space, and white space is associated with the preceding sentence. So this clip here has the trailing white space. This one doesn't. If I swap them, they swap white space so that it preserves the amount of space that's between them. And that is what makes the paragraphs work nicely, is that when you swap the order of clips, they swap their white space. So that was something that didn't do at first, and it took me some fighting with it to figure out like how to make it so that moving things around in the timeline feels sensible in a text editor world. So
that makes sense. That
yeah,
makes sense.
so there's a handful of little things like that were annoyances, and then I had to be like, okay, well that's annoying. How do we design our way out of this pickle?
I love this. I also think it is not really a timeline though, right? Like on the bottom, it reminds me of like Notion's model of like blocks, except that you can take a block and throw it off the screen or something if it's in the way of your document.
Yeah, there's a
But it
little
makes me
bit.
wonder what it would mean to like scrub through this like a timeline, like what it would look like at a particular point.
If I hold the shift key, you'll notice there's this little blade that shows up, and I can use that to like scale clips. There's a like I tried playing with like what ideas from Final Cut can I borrow? So the like blade all and the like the stretchy clip editing stuff is in here, but it's almost meaningless. Like there's a much simpler model. Like the way that gaps between clips work is a little bit weird. It's all the kind of thing where I need to live in this tool for more than 15 minutes before the call today and have some, like real emotions about how it feels to use, and then go and share those emotions with Claude and have it continue to be the therapist that it always is for me. And then maybe some better software will fall out.
The gap between like the idea to the implementation being so small with being able to vibe code something is so crazy that you can have the thing and then try to figure out if it makes sense or not.
Yeah.
Or it's really fun.
And that like just to eat up a couple more minutes of this really record short demo is I hate AI. Like I really, really hate AI. I think AI is terrible. And I use it all day, every day. I use it for work stuff. I use it for personal projects. I use it to figure out how to go through a gender transition. Like it's been huge for that. There are so many things that I am finding it useful for, but I also feel it absolutely sucking out my soul and like destroying a lot of things that I love and care about. And I'm holding these two things simultaneously, and I am not letting go of either of them. And so the only reason that I feel okay with something like this being vibe coded is because I do not care at all about the code or even the process of arriving at the code. I only care about, I want a text editor where I have a timeline and I can hide some clips. And vibe coding is a way faster way to get me to the place where I'm feeling what it feels like to have a text editor with a timeline and some clips I can hide than building it from scratch. But I'm conscious that I miss out on all the fun that I would have had coming up with the, you know, the little algorithms and the little functions and all that kind of stuff. And I love doing that. I love, as much as I hate textual code, I love coming up with that kind of stuff. So it's like such an agonizing thing to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like shortcut my way to getting to play with the thing that I want to play with. While at the same time, like the agony is knowing that I'm depriving myself of a whole bunch of other things that I would also enjoy getting to have. And that's just like, that's one of these, you know, like, hey, we're all born under capitalism. It sucks, but, you know, at least I can go to the grocery store and buy an apple if I need one. That's, you know, that's what I have to grapple with every time I touch a computer these days. Yeah, yep. Any other questions? Anything I missed in the chat? Oh yeah, Katherine. Yeah.
This is super cool to see. I have that feeling where it's like someone else built the thing that you've always wanted to build, and I'm like, I'm so glad this exists, but I wish I had done more work to do it myself as well. But I'm so glad that this version's out there and it can inspire me. I built something similar for writing poetry actually, where it's kind of like I think it takes a different approach where it has the philosophy that of bringing those kind of like variations of the text more to the forefront and exposing that instead of hiding it in an alternative timeline. Although I think this is also a really cool direction and I want to explore this. But yeah, I guess I don't have a question, but I think this idea of being able to play with the text for kind of in an expressive way and tactile way, and both ways of kind of hiding that in the editor view and also exposing that are both really interesting to me. So I'm curious to see if you'll take this further in any particular direction.
Yeah, I absolutely will take this further because I've committed to demoing it at the Ink and Switch staff call on Friday, and this sucks too much to demo at the Ink and Switch staff call. Like they're a tough crowd. If you ever get the chance to demo to Ink and Switch, do it because they're you know, they'll hit you with some real existential criticism, as we call it. So I'm gonna do a little bit more on this to make it, you know, stand up to that crowd. And I don't know what yet. That's the thing. Like I'm at the space right now where it's like, okay, this does all the things that I wanted it to do so far, and a ton of things that I didn't want it to do. And so now I get to go and sit with that and figure out, are there other things that I want? Or if I take away the things that I don't want, does that surface other stuff? So, oh, awesome. Yeah, prosplay.net. Thanks, Katherine. And I'll put this up on a URL somewhere and share it somewhere. And then feel bad about sharing something that's vibe coded because that's my sickness. That's all the time we've got. Thanks, y'all. NoxNode, you're up. Where's the stop button? There's the stop button.
Can you see the screen?
Yeah, we do. We see.
Okay. Is it readable, or should I make it bigger?
Yeah, if I squint, it's readable. If you control plus 1 or 2 times, it might be more readable, but it's not bad.
Yeah. Is that better?
That's great. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So for some context, since April 2022, I've been researching and exploring alternative ways of programming, all just non-commercial hobby stuff in my free time. And at the start of this year, I challenged myself to write 1 program every day. I've sort of missed that goal, but I've done a lot, and I'm going to show some stuff. Mostly it's all single C file per day. Some are ASCII hex dumps of just executable files. Mostly all really low-level tools on x64 Windows. Some of it's ARM64 to Linux, and some x64 UEFI. Mostly these are just tools for myself to learn from and improve my computing experience. But eventually I would like to make games and stuff for other people using these tools. I actually set out to make like a game, but I ended up going rabbit hole after rabbit hole, and now here I am. And maybe if some very like-minded people see this, maybe they'd want to use the tools themselves. Some general goals is to reduce frustrations and enhance joy when computing. Stuff like opening up the calc thing and it taking like 10 seconds to load is pretty frustrating. So I made a replacement that's just very simple and opens up instantly. One other general goal is to get as close to as possible to complete understanding and control over my hardware, and to have a foundation for building cool things. A general approach I've been taking is reducing / avoiding dependencies, abstraction, and complexity whenever I can. Generally a very bottom-up approach, and I'm exploring this kind of idea of bringing the human close to the computer rather than the computer close to the human. AKA, it's fine if there's a very steep learning curve because I'm the user. An example is I made a mnemonic system for memorizing opcodes rather than making another language. And so now I'll show some notable files. I got a list of them here. And each of these are labeled after the day. So January 11th, I made a text editor with Vim motions and some text. And one of the things in Vim that I wanted in this that Vim didn't have is I want to use the spacebar as a modifier key when doing commands, because it's, you know, it's right there. It's your thumb's right there. Why can't I use that as a modifier key? But in Vim, I mean, you can do stuff with Vim script, but with a simple Vim RC that I use, I can't really do that. It treats that as a separate like key in a sequence of keys or whatever. So that's one thing. I explored just writing executables like byte by byte, like write the executable header, and then the machine code. And there's with x64, it's kind of annoying because there's like variable length stuff, but I added like padding bytes to make each instruction roughly 8 bytes, so it's like fixed length. And I made a like kind of projectional editor for machine code. This is like on the left is the output of that previous ASCII hex dump run through a hex ASCII hex to binary, and then on the right there's kind of like a higher-ish level representation. It's kind of just compressed assembly because I wanted the spacing to be like 1-for-1 on the left and right side. And the colors is white is the opcode. This bluish is like the immediate values, and the other colors are registers. And I can go in and edit this using like chorded keyboard commands, which I like. I'm calling like hex chords, because it's like I'm using the groups of 4 keys on the keyboard to make like a hexadecimal digit, like using the 4 keys as bits. And so for the making conditional jumps, if I press the leftmost key in that group, that's less than the rightmost key is greater than the left 2 keys, or is less than or equal to right 2 keys, greater than or equal to middle 2 keys is equal, outer is not equal. And so I kind of memorize how to do all the instructions by like the shape that I make with my hand when pressing the keys. So, but some are just I use the letters on the keys. So like add is A, S is subtract, D is divide. For left shift, it's like the left 2 keys. Right shift is like the right 2 keys. And yeah, that's generally that. The
what four
Yeah.
what 4 keys on the keyboard do you use as like your chord?
For the conditional opcodes, I'm using ZXCV, And for the math operations, I'm using ASDF, and load and stores are on QWER. But this isn't like a feature complete thing. There's lots of visual bugs,
Yeah.
and not all the chords are implemented. But yeah,
Totally. It's very cool. I really like the mental model of that.
thanks. This one is the calculator app that I used to replace calc.exe. I can actually, I was racing to see if by the time this opens, can I reopen the run dialog, switch it to mine and open it, and I can't. But yeah, this one's basically just like, I open it up, there's hexadecimal and decimal representation of like the operands, and I can just have multiply, divide, subtract. And when I press one of the operators, it switches me over to the other thing, so I can edit the other thing really quickly. And then the latest thing, what I'm working on is an Omni editor, but I don't have a lot of progress yet. Right now, it's currently just I'm exploring this like different way of visualizing binary. So I'm trying to make like a more compressed way of representing a byte, because I want to be able to switch between like ASCII and like a representation of all the stuff outside of the ASCII range with using the same amount of space. And another cool thing that I thought of recently that I'm gonna probably do this weekend is with this editor, if I have on the left side that kind of bit view, then I can color code each individual bit with what it maps to in the high level kind of representation. And eventually I want to make like more visualizations and be more high level than just this like compressed assembly thing. My future plans are making more methods of visualizing and editing machine code, like having a C style thing, but still I want to have the primary artifact be the machine code and try to just avoid any kind of extra layers if I can, as long as I can. But I eventually want to get to something where it's more ergonomic and stuff. And eventually want to have like editors for all types of media and like a visualization toolkit kind of thing where I can just combine features of different ways of visualizing and editing, so I can make like an on-the-fly mode just for the context that I'm in. And yeah, that's most of what I wanted to show. I have some other stuff if people have questions, but yeah.
That's super cool. I don't know if you have the chat open, but you're getting lots of love in the chat. So
Sweet.
Non-exhaustive list of inspirations. That's cool.
Yeah.
I recognize some of those things. That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody questions? We got 5 minutes left.
I
10
have
minutes.
a question.
Actually, I lied. 10 minutes.
Assembly visualization is something that I'm intimately familiar with, and assembly is kind of large. You get like thousands of instructions theoretically, depending how you count them. How do you manually kind of list some of the instructions that you support, or do you pull it from like LLVM or Capstone or a library like that?
Yeah, so I in more early in when I started this, I was looking. I started trying to make like a C compiler, and I wanted to make it like extremely simple and just target like a subset of x64. And then I was thinking I would be cool to compile to other ISAs. And then I was thinking, okay, what's like a common subset that's like trivially translatable to other ISAs? So like everything's got like add two registers, add a register and an immediate value. And for the main thing that's a little difficult is conditional jumps. RISC-V, it like couples together the compare and the conditional jump, whereas on x64 it's like you have a separate compare instruction and the conditional jump. So for x64, like I'm making everything fixed size. So within that fixed size 8 bytes, I'm doing the compare and the conditional jump. I have a list of all the x64 stuff. It's one 64-bit number because 8 bytes for the actual like bits of the instruction, and then like a mask. And this is a way of also reducing complexity for like the disassembler. I don't actually look at the individual bytes of the thing. I just look at the I look at the mask, and I noticed that um, if you have like a byte that has a register encoded in it, it follows a certain like bit pattern that I can just kind of match on, and I don't actually have to do a lot of specific x64 like messing around with. I can just use this like general masking of like the 1 is all the bits for the instruction, the 0 is all the bits for operands. So yeah, like a 00 byte is always going to be an immediate value. A C0 is the mod RM byte. So I know that there's 3 bits in there for each of the operands.
So this is all manually maintained. How many instructions do you have?
It's like 64 is like the core, but I'm thinking of expanding it a little bit. But like each thing is like a group of 8 is like these are the immediate offset loads of signed 8-bit 16. This is a relative load of the signed, and this is the unsigned variants of load. And there's like store, and then the math ones. There's 16 math, 16 loads. Since store doesn't care about unsigned or signed, I store some miscellaneous stuff in that kind of extra 8 bytes of that 16 chunk. And then the conditional stuff. There's also some extra that I put like calls and jumps in.
Nice.
But yeah, this is all specifically chosen this subset because it's like I looked at RISC-V and ARM and saw that there's kind of a 1-to-1-ish translation, not exactly, but trying to get as close as possible to that.
We probably have time for one more question if anybody's got one. I'll let the crickets chirp for a couple more seconds, and then I guess that's that. NoxNode, really cool. Love seeing when people make something just to scratch a whole bunch of their own itches.
Yeah.
Yeah, it always delights me how for everybody who does something like this, it comes out so differently. Like it's such a reflection of everybody's different interests and relationships with the computer. So thank you. Yeah, Shawn, Knox, thanks for sharing today. Ivy, thanks for sharing today, you asshole. Thanks everybody for coming out, and we'll see you at the end of July. Yeah, see you all.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you.